So first off, I want to express my gratitude for being able to get up here and present to you a lesson. And this is my only second time to be behind the pulpit. So I'm going to see if my work at the Lambs Academy is paying off so far. And I'm just going to put a little plug in here. If you're kind of like me and you need to be held somewhat accountable or encouraged to study, I would recommend that you look into that. They have different classes throughout different times of the day. So I believe and think that it has helped me tremendously. So far, we've done a study on 1st and 2nd Samuel, actually a preaching course, and then this time I was on the fence whether or not to take a class on Hebrews, which is where we're going to be tonight. But the other topic that was available when I thought my time slot was available was hard topics for preachers. Well, me and Marie discussed it, and I decided to go with the hard topic for preachers. So anyway, the other thing I'd like to do is echo what Chris said this morning. I think it was presented about as good as it could have. And I stated before closing remarks after the lectureship, I've attended 37 of those since the beginning. And it is a uplifting experience. But the downside to it is there are members here that don't attend. And I don't understand it. And as far as I'm concerned, this time the topic was so relevant and the speakers were so on par that it may have been the best one yet. Okay, so now that my opening remarks are done, I'm going to present to you Christ ministry. Okay, and we're going to look at what Jesus did for us and what we should be willing to do for him. So let's turn to Hebrews 2. And we'll start in verse 9. But we see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angel, for the suffering of death, crowned with glory and honor, that he, by the grace of God, might taste death for everyone. So right there, that states that Jesus tasted death for everyone. Now, I have 3 points. Jesus left heaven. He left a place that was a sin-free environment, and he came to this earth sinless. And why did he do that? Well, he came to this earth and suffered the same things we do. Okay? And I'm sure I don't have all of them. First one's temptation. If you would turn to Matthew chapter 4. And during our preaching class, we studied the 3 different types of sermons: the topical, the textual, and the expository. And this may not be any one of those 3, but I like to let the scriptures speak for themselves. Okay, so we'll start in verse 1. And Jesus led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And we had fasted 40 days and 40 nights. Afterwards, he was hungry. Now, when the tempter came to him, he said, If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become bread. But Jesus answered him and said, It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. Then the devil took him up into a holy city and set him on a pinnacle of the temple, and said to him, If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, He shall give his angels charge over you, and in their hands shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. Jesus said to him, "It is written again, you shall not tempt the Lord your God." Okay, so this little verse 6 there tells you that even Satan knows Scripture. Okay, and again, starting verse 8, again the devil took him up on an exceeding high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, "All these things I give you if you will fall down and worship me." Then Jesus said to him, "Away with you, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only you shall serve." Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and ministered to him. Okay. Next, just like us, Jesus was betrayed. Not only was he betrayed, but he was betrayed by one of the chosen apostles, Judas, for 30 pieces of silver. And he also experienced death. He was nailed to a cross like a thief. Okay, just think about that one. He was nailed to a cross like a thief. And why did he do these things? So that we may be sanctified. If you would turn back to Hebrews. In verse 11. For both he who sanctifies and those who are being sanctified are all of one, for which reason he is not ashamed to be called brethren. He is not ashamed to call them brethren. In 1 Peter 2, verses 9 and 10. But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, that you may proclaim the praises of him who called you out of the darkness into his marvelous light, who once were not a people, but are now the people of God, who had not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy. Okay? He came and suffered those things so that we may have a sympathizer. Go back to Hebrews chapter 4. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 4. Verses 14 through 16. Seeing then that we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weakness, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Another thing that he did is he conquered the king of death. Let's turn to Hebrews 2:14. And so much then as children have partaken of the flesh and the blood, that's us, he himself likewise shared in the same, that through death he might destroy him who had the power of death, and that is the devil. He also made our value known. Okay, let's turn to Matthew 10. Verses 28 through 33. And do not fear those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not two sparrows sold for a copper coin, and not one of them falls to the ground apart from the Father's will? But The very hairs of your head are all numbered. Do not fear, therefore, you are of more value than many sparrows. Therefore, whoever confesses me before men, he will also confess before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, him I also will deny before my Father who is in heaven. Okay, so what must we do on our side? You would turn to Matthew 7. Verse 15. Beware of false prophets who come in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. Okay, so we need to have enough knowledge that we're aware when somebody is not speaking the truth. Okay, and to continue in this passage, let's read 16 through 24. You will know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Even so, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Therefore, by their fruits, you will know them. Not everyone that says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of the Father in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. Therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will make him a wise man who built his house upon a rock. Okay, in the following passages, Jesus explains the cost, because there is a cost associated with following Christ. Therefore, whoever hears these things of mine and does them, I will liken him unto a wise man who built his house upon a rock. And when the rains descended, the floods came, and the winds blew, they beat on that house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. But everyone who hears these things of mine and does them, and does not do them, will be like the foolish man who built his house on the sand, and the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat on that house, and it fell, and great was its fall. And so it was when Jesus had ended these sayings that the people were astonished at his teachings, for he had taught them as one having authority and not as the scribes. Okay, so Chris kind of touched on this morning. Right now, anytime we gather, Jesus is in our presence, okay? So who wouldn't want to be in the presence of Christ? You would turn to Mark chapter 5. Mark chapter 5, starting in verse 25. Now, a certain woman had a flow of blood for 12 years and had suffered many things from many physicians. She had spent all that she had and was no better, but rather grew worse. When she had heard about Jesus, she came behind him in a crowd and touched his garment. For she said, if only I may touch his clothes, I shall be made well. Immediately the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of the affliction. And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself that power had gone out of him, turned around and in the crowd said, who touched my clothes? But the disciple said to him, you see the multitude thronging you, and you say, who touched me? And he looked around to see her who had done this thing. But the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, daughter, having faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction. As I was doing my study for this lesson, I thought to myself, when I get to heaven, I don't even want to be on the right or the left hand. I just want to be in the room. Okay, I can be in the back. It doesn't really matter, just as long as I'm in the presence of God. So, and there is guess I didn't write it down. See if I can find it real quick. There is a passage where two of the apostles, their mother comes to Jesus and asks for them to be able to sit on the right and left hand. And clearly, at that point, they don't understand that Jesus' kingdom will not be of this earth. And he goes into the rest of the passage explaining to them that his kingdom is not of this earth. One point that was brought out during the lectureship was the herd mentality. I've used that example in the high school class before, and I'm fixing to date myself, but one of my favorite programs growing up was the Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. Okay, and on that program, they showed, I can remember one instance, there was this herd of gazelle out on the plains, and they showed the lions picking their spots out around them and just waiting until they could pick out the right one. And what they picked out was either one of the young ones or one of the old and weak ones. Okay, so I couldn't bring a herd of gazelle in here, so I brought a little different visual aid. So this is one member. Okay, see how easily that's broken? This is approximately 16, 17 members. Can't break it. So my point is, when you're by yourself, you're this one member whom Satan can easily break. Okay? But when we're all here together, he's going to have trouble. Now, in closing, Job, everybody has their favorites. Okay? Job was one of my favorite Old Testament characters. And this was also brought out. I think Chris brought it up. Chris didn't bring it up. Somebody else brought it up during the lectureship that I'll just read it, starting in verse 7, chapter 1. And the Lord said to Satan, where do you come? So Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro on the earth and walking back and forth on it. Then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless, upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil? Satan answered the Lord and said, does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, and around all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But now stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. And the Lord said to Satan, Behold, all that he has is in your power, only do not lay a hand on his person. So Satan went out in the presence of the Lord. And those of us that are familiar with this account know that Job lost all that he had, but he never turned away from God, and he was rewarded for that. If I'm not mistaken, in chapter 42, verse 12. Now the Lord blessed the latter days of Job more more than his beginning, for he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 female donkeys. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters. So not only did he gain back everything that he lost, he was blessed with more. That is what we are in the presence of. I shudder to think why somebody wouldn't want that. That is the entirety of my lesson. If you have need tonight, or if you feel like you've made some bad decisions in your life, and we all have, okay, there's nobody that can stand here and say that I've never done anything. Christ is the only one that is sinless. But if you have need tonight, if we can help in any way, would you come as we stand and sing?